Good morning, everyone. My name is Celina Shocken, and I'm a consultant for advanced global health. I have worked for a number of years, about 15 to 20 years in public health. I lived in Guinea-Bissau and Rwanda, and I spent time in a lot of the garden spots around the world, and worked for nonprofits and worked for donors and spent some time in the private sector. And I was really interested in this question of how can we use innovation to help women lead healthier, more productive lives. And so I created a consulting firm, and I work with a number of private sector companies, nonprofits, and people thinking about women's health. So I'm going to talk to you today about reproductive health, maternal mortality, and my personal favorite topic, which is HPV and cervical cancer. So reproductive health is incredibly important for women. Most of you already know. It helps women to be able to space their pregnancies, to make sure that they have the right health in order to get pregnant, that they have enough money, food for their families. In many cases, women in developing countries will have 6, 7, 8, 9 children, and this becomes incredibly dangerous for them. So being able to make these decisions for themselves and for their families, and often with their partners, hopefully. And what we're working on in the international community is long-acting reversible contraception. So these are things that you can put in or inject that will last for a really long time so that the woman doesn't need to worry about what happens if there's a stock out of the drug that she needs. So there's injectables that can last for about 3 months, implants, and IUDs. And there's 222 million women that have an unmet need for family planning. When I say innovation, I mean thinking about devices, but also innovative approaches. And so we need to think about ways of using the market in a new way. And I mentioned implants. So there's a number of implants that are 1 or 2 rods that a woman can have inserted into her arm, and they will provide contraception for 3 to 5 years. And there was an amazing deal that was made a few years ago between Merck and Bayer and the Gates Foundation and the Clinton Foundation. And what the Gates Foundation and Clinton Foundation said was, if you drop the price really significantly, we will guarantee you high volumes. And so they dropped the price from about $18 per implant in developing countries to $5. And in exchange, last year, we went from 2.2 million of these implants to 7.7 million of these implants used. So innovation is thinking about how we can scale up, how we can provide choices for women, ways of involving their families, and making these things affordable. Maternal mortality, incredibly important issue, and we've made some great progress on this. We've gone from about 500,000 women dying in childbirth to about 289,000 women. That's still a lot of women. It's 800 women a day dying in childbirth, and about 90% of that is completely preventable. Women die from postpartum hemorrhage. They die from preeclampsia, which is hypertension during pregnancy, from sepsis, from unsafe conditions, and from the effects of unsafe abortions. But there's all kinds of ways in which we can innovate to make this better. When a woman dies, it greatly impacts her family. Often her baby will die, older children get sicker, girls get pulled out of school, and the socioeconomic status of the family decreases. So it's not just the mother. So this is a really amazing invention. It's called the Odin device, and it was designed by an Argentinian auto mechanic. His name is Jorge Odin, and he was having a dinner party one night, and the cork in his wine bottle went into the bottle instead of out. And he and his buddy who were having dinner were trying to figure out how they could possibly pull the cork out of the wine bottle. And they came up with some ideas, and do not ask me how, but sometime that night, Jorge was thinking, I wonder if I could use that to help get babies that are stuck out of the birth canal. And he created the Odin device, which is basically a vacuum extractor. And once this rolls out, it's going to be able to be used to help to pull babies out where women are not able to get a C-section. I work on oxytocin quality. And oxytocin is a drug, almost every single woman in the world who has a baby gets an injection of oxytocin. And oxytocin basically constricts the veins, and it helps to stop postpartum hemorrhage and stop bleeding. And we've been working really hard on getting access for this really important drug. And what we found is that now we're getting access. In almost all places in the world, women have access to this drug, but the quality of it's really bad. And once it's about temperature stable until it gets to about 85, 90 degrees Fahrenheit, which, by the way, is the temperature in a lot of these health centers. And at that point, the quality of the drug really falls off. And so we're trying to figure out how we can shape the market to have better quality drugs, to improve the supply chain so that the drugs stay cool. One of the things we found is that probably the reason why the quality of oxytocin is so bad in Africa is that almost all of the drug goes on Qatar Airways. It flies from India or China where it's made, and it stops in Doha. And it comes off the airplane in Doha, and it sits on the tarmac for one day. And it gets to like 110, 120 degrees. And so the drug is sort of ruined by the time it ever gets to Africa. We're working on trying to improve that, and also to come up with temperature-stable versions of these drugs and ways of monitoring and measuring the drug once it arrives at the point of use to make sure that it's good quality. There's also simpler innovations, like the solar suitcase. In many places in Africa in particular, women deliver, often in the middle of the night at a health center that has no electricity. And nurses and midwives are using the flashlights on their cell phones to deliver babies. As you can imagine, that's quite difficult. And this is a solar suitcase that provides enough light to do a safe delivery. And it also has a Doppler and all the other things that you need in order to have a safe delivery. And I also mentioned safer surgery. This is incredibly important because when women have obstructed labor, they have other challenges delivering. They need to have access to a fast C-section. They need a sanitary place to have it. And they need to have access to blood and to well-trained doctors. In this case, this is a C-section that was happening in rural Uganda. And so we need to have access to all of these, and there's many groups working on it. So I also wanted to talk really briefly about my personal favorite topic, which is the growth of non-communicable diseases. It's so important right now as people are living longer. They're experiencing a lot of long-lasting, long diseases that come from living longer, from having changes in lifestyle. Those are things like diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, and cancer. And cancer also has a really strong link with infectious disease. And so as people have HPV or HIV, they often will get cancers that come from these diseases. So in particular, my favorite topic, which is HPV, human papillomavirus. So HPV is this incredibly common disease that we don't talk about very much. Believe it or not, about 80% of Americans have HPV at some point in their lives. And it is around the world, it is a majority of people that get HPV. And your body handles it naturally, and over a period of years, the body just attacks it like it attacks many viruses, and it goes away. And at any given time, there's 300 million people that have this disease. You can imagine I'm a lot of fun at cocktail parties. I talk about this all the time. But it is the coolest disease to work on, because unlike so many diseases, we have this incredibly long time to do something about it. It takes about 10 to 15 years from the time that someone gets HPV until they get cervical cancer and die from it. What a cool disease. I mean, that's great. So we need to identify which of these women have HPV and are not getting over it. So these are the people that have high-grade cervical lesions right here. Oops, sorry. So about 10 million people that need treatment. And we have really great treatments available. In the United States, we have basically eradicated this disease. Even though we don't have the best healthcare system, we have a good enough healthcare system that over a period of time, we can identify all the women that have this and do something about it to treat it. So that last year in the United States, 3,000 women died of cervical cancer, which is very, very small. But it is the #1 cancer-related death for women in the world. So what can we do? So the first thing, many of you have probably heard about vaccinations for HPV. Fantastic vaccine. There's a couple of different ones. They work incredibly well. Really difficult to convince all parents to vaccinate their daughters and their sons. Their sons should be vaccinated as well. Even in the United States, Only 50% of teenage girls have gotten one shot of the HPV vaccine, and only 30% have gotten all 3 doses. So thinking about scaling that up in developing countries is really challenging, but something we need to do. And we have so little resources to do this. Last year, the US government spent $6.8 billion on HIV, and the total amount of money spent by all donors combined on HPV was $17 million. So this great disease that is causing so much pain and discomfort and death, we're spending so little money on. So I'm working with a company in Seattle called Global Good, and we're working on an HPV screening device. What we want to do is to make it so that you could take an HPV test in your home. You would take your own sample, ladies, this is important. You would take your own sample, swab it on a piece of paper, and if the paper changes colors, you take it to the health center and say, I need to be examined. We're talking about nothing less than the end of the pelvic exam. Ladies, that's got to sound great. And we want to do this for about $2 per test so that it is going to be available in developing countries all around the world. And of course, once we identify that someone has the disease and needs treatment, we need to be able to offer them that treatment. We don't want it to just feel like a death sentence. So the treatment options that we have some great ones. We have cryotherapy, where you just freeze off the lesion, similar to what you would do with a wart or something like that. Very easy to do, quite inexpensive. We're trying to get the cost to probably about $5 per treatment. So I hope if you take anything away from my talk, it's that HPV is the coolest disease, and we should do something about it. There are lots and lots of other diseases. There's breast cancer, and we don't have good answers on how to help women with breast cancer in developing countries. There's not enough being done, and the surgical options just simply aren't good, and radiation and chemotherapy is extremely difficult to do, and we need innovation in this space. We need innovation for diabetes, for heart disease, and so many other things, which is why I hope all of you will get excited about what you could do to innovate. And also, as we think about innovation and the ways in which we're working together to innovate, we can't forget all the people that have these great ideas in developing countries, people that are closer to the problem. And this is a picture from Haiti. An NGO sent a 3D printer to the Ministry of Health in Haiti, and they trained them on how to use the 3D printer. And what they said was, make whatever you want. We don't care what you make, just make stuff. And what they started making was umbilical cord clamps, because they didn't have enough of them. And then they started making parts to fix the equipment that the Ministry of Health had that was no longer working. And I think if we could find ways of getting 3D printers and our innovative processes and our tools out to developing countries and train them on these innovation processes, the sky is the limit to what people would design. So I want to end here and just say, thank you very much, and where do you come in with all of this? Thank you.